Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Lavoie, and I'm pleased to be here on day 2 of Mobile on Air. We've got a great lineup of speakers today. I'm blessed to be able to start the agenda off. I know there's an exciting group of speakers with great content that everyone's going to want to take advantage of. Today, I'm going to spend some time with Rik Hogkammer of Bol.com, talking about how mobile trends in the industry are impacting the way brands are going to market. And Rik will give us some insight on how Bol.com is adjusting to that environment. Before I do so, though, I thought I'd spend a couple of minutes talking about Airship, just one slide to give you some context on who we are and what we do, and then spend about 10 minutes talking about some mobile engagement trends that we're seeing in 2020, certainly a unique and different year for all of us. We'll then move into a fireside chat with Rik. So without any further ado, let me just give you a quick introduction to Airship. Airship is a pioneer in the mobile and customer engagement arena. We do that by helping brands engage with their customers through the mobile app, by connecting with them through app-based communications like push notifications, message center, in-app communications, but also SMS and email, web notifications, and mobile wallet. So really the full spectrum of mobile channels that really consumers associate with the mobile device. And developing that connection with consumers is a critical part. We're also blessed to work with some of the world's leading brands, folks like the BBC and Vodafone, many of the largest airlines in the world like KLM and Air France and American Airlines and Alaska, as well as some of the leading media companies in the world like Gannett, Wall Street Journal, and others. So as we look across the landscape, we have certainly seen an incredible growth in the messages being sent. And I thought I'd start by giving you some insights into some of the trends that we've seen more recently. So consumer habits are absolutely changing, and they're being driven by lots of different things. Obviously, the world events are not absent from that overall landscape change. In fact, one of the things that we've seen with COVID-19 is a disruption to, early on, many of the supply chains that businesses had prepared to support their customers. This particular study, or the data I'm showing here, was produced by McKinsey in June and is really demonstrating a couple of things. Number one, that the engagement that consumers have with brands is changing dramatically over time, right? So you can see that the consumers have tried new shopping behaviors at a pretty high rate across the countries that you see here. In fact, greater than 50% of consumers have tried a new engagement or behavior with a brand in that time frame. But most surprisingly is the fact that a large number of them are going to continue that modified behavior after the COVID-19 environment resolves itself. And so, sometimes the change in behavior is being driven by a need, whether it's a disruption in the supply chain and not having access to the goods or services that they normally get from whatever that retailer or brand was. In other cases, it's about pursuing really products or goods that are more important to them at that point in time. And all of that results in them having perhaps new experiences with brands. And the fact that they are planning to continue that behavior is both a great opportunity to brands that have acquired new customers, but also a challenge for those who may have resulted in less engagement or introduced their customer to another alternative in the marketplace. And as it relates to these changing behaviors, we also see a lot of trends, again, from McKinsey, that there is going to be an increase in the growth of online usage. A little bit difficult to see in the top right-hand corner of this particular slide, but really anytime you see blue, the lightest color of blue represents a 14% increase in online behavior, or online engagement, or transactions with a brand. And as the color blue gets darker, it goes up to 50%. Conversely, on the red side, starting with the lightest color red being a 14% decrease, all the way up to the darkest color red of 50%. And of course, what you see here is that the colors are predominantly blue, which means that there's at least a 15% increase expected across all of these markets, but and then defined by the categories on the left-hand side. So I don't think it's entirely surprising to see the growth during a pandemic, but what this is telling us is that consumers expect to continue this behavior beyond the resolution of the lockdowns. And one of the things I find interesting is that both the US and the UK markets, as well as Spain and India, which had traditionally had lower conversion rates online, are expecting to see a dramatic increase in those online engagements and transactions or conversions over the coming years. So certainly an important trend for marketers to be able to engage with their audience and know that there is a change in their outlook or behavior about completing online transactions. We've married some of that McKinsey data with our own Airship information, and we performed a benchmark study of 745 million app users around the world, and we looked at their behavior or their data trends back in February of 2019 and compared it with February of 2020 to see what a 12-month trend was looking like. And then we compared that to the months of March through June of this year to see how what had been an annual trend, how that was being impacted by the current environment. And so, not surprisingly, what you see that there are some verticals where there's a dramatic increase in terms of their overall engagement with mobile apps, but some industries like travel and transportation, sports and recreation are still struggling given the environment that we work in. And so you'll see for most of these categories in the second blue column, there was a decrease in overall opens per user from 2019 February to 2020 February. So you can see that those trends were going down with the exception of travel and transportation where opens were going up. And then if you compare that on the right-hand side of this chart to mobile engagement and opens per user in the last, from March through June, you can see a dramatic reversal in that trend of opens in the mobile channel. And I think that is indicative of a number of things. Certainly the environment is one of them, but it's a great opportunity because all of a sudden the consumers are finding that their engagement with brands is likely going to be through a mobile connection, and the mobile app is an important part of that. So some really important takeaways, I think, are first, that we had been seeing message volume from marketers increasing at about a 15% rate year over year. That means that marketing organizations were seeing the mobile channels as important channels for the overall engagement with their target audience. But since February of 2020, that has increased 38%, which is indicative of both the fact that the brands themselves are finding ways to keep in contact with their audience in a new environment, but also the fact that consumers themselves are finding the mobile channels to be much more important to them as well as they look to keep in touch with their brands and keep in contact with their brands. So a great opportunity for brands to continue to develop the importance of the reliance on and the connection to their audience through the mobile device and the mobile channels. The other thing we saw, which was very, very important, is an increase in the direct open rates for push notifications. Push notifications open rates had been declining for some time, and we saw a dramatic reversal in that with an increase of 22%, the highest push notification open rates that we've seen in more than 4 years. That also really kind of emphasizes the value of the mobile app. We already know that the mobile app user, or the customer that's downloaded the mobile app, is 2.5 to 3 times more valuable than someone who does not have the mobile app. And so having a deeper engagement with those high value customers is an incredibly valuable opportunity for brands, and translates directly into transactions. And then lastly, I think another really important trend that we've seen in this data is the willingness on the part of customers to provide and opt into location. Location opt-in had been declining steadily since the introduction of GDPR. And what we've seen since the pandemic, or in this data from March to June, we've seen a 39% increase in the rate with which consumers are willing to opt into location-based permissions. That's really important. Obviously, there's some very timely use cases around that. If you're in media, the ability to deliver local news that's driven by location data, but also in the day-to-day lives of customers as they look to participate in more contactless experiences. Location is a very important aspect of making that experience come to life, or really kind of enabling that experience between the consumer and the brand. So a lot of applications for location data, and it really is the aspect of the mobile device that is unique. It is the part of the mobile device that allows a brand to really create a differentiated experience. So as brands are, absorbing this data, as well as all the realities of the environment that we're working in, it creates a combination of opportunity and risk, candidly, because anytime you're expanding your marketplace or your share of mind with a particular target audience, that means in many cases it's being taken from somewhere else. And so I thought it would be great for us to hear from someone on the front lines of this on a daily basis. So I'd like to introduce Rik Hogkammer from Bol.com to come in and talk with us about how Bol.com is addressing both the opportunity and the challenges associated with mobile engagement, and Bol.com being certainly a leader in online commerce. I think he'll be able to bring some great insights to us. So a little bit about Bol.com. They are the major online retailer in the Netherlands. They have about 2,000 employees and annual active customers of 11.5 million. They are certainly the leading platform in the Netherlands and Belgium, with over 35,000 third-party sellers, and they offer 25 million products across various categories of books, electronics, and many more. So they are a central source of commerce for a very large part of the European market. And Rik has been with Bol.com for, I think, almost 7 years now. Is that right, Rik?
Yeah, 6, almost 7, yes.
And as part of your career, you've really played really the majority of your career has been within the app world. Now, of course, being head of app growth for Bol.com. But even before that, you've been focused on digital marketing, online commerce, and apps before joining Bol.com. As I think about these trends, one of the things that kind of strikes me is that Bol.com is already an online environment, online commerce provider. Maybe you could share with the group exactly how Bol.com decided to create a mobile app and what the objectives were for that mobile app, given the fact that you've already established yourself pretty substantially in an online or digital capacity.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me. Really glad to be here. So as you mentioned, Bolt.com is already a 20-year-old company, so we've been there for a while. And actually, when we decided to do an app, we were already having apps affiliated to our brand, because we had an affiliate model, and of course we're only active in the Netherlands and Belgium, so relatively seen we're a small player, and of course we like to be innovative, but if you're not like one of the really big companies, you cannot be the most innovative company there is. So we first waited for the market to evolve, and then decided, okay, is this the best bet we should take, yes or no? Because I believe it's 7 years ago already, or 8 years already, when the company had just one team, and that was a team of 4 developers and 1 product owner, and they were actually responsible for mobile, and that was the mobile of the company. And they created a mobile website, then they eventually also created 2 apps, but you can only do so much in your time. So they decided to firstly focus on mobile website, because back then not all websites were responsive. And in the same time, they also wanted to move to apps, just to get to know how it works. And we were having an affiliate model, and what they then actually did is open the affiliate model for apps too. So that was quite challenging, because they had some learnings on apps and on different apps affiliated to our company and how they performed in the App Store. And eventually those numbers were getting quite big, and we were transparent from the start that we would eventually also have apps. So it's not that we asked them to create apps and eventually copycat them. So that was 6 years ago when I joined the company. Then we launched our first own app for iOS, and later, 3 months later, we did Android. And back then it was still a small team, but the main challenge, of course, was to compete on ASO, as we also didn't got any money to launch the app to do promotions, which, if you ask me, is also quite insane for a brand which is a market leader in a company. But yeah, perhaps when we call it agile, it makes sense. So when we launched the app, the first thing, of course, was, okay, how are we gonna stand out in the world of apps that are already established in the App Store with our brand's name in their app title? So that was challenging. And well, later on, of course, when mobile shares were growing, so did our app shares, and eventually our app became bigger and bigger. But still, and then I'm talking about 2014, 2015, we were still living in a world where some people, as always, say, okay, mobile is going to be a big thing, and companies like Facebook were acquiring WhatsApp, but that again are the really big companies. Small companies were not really going all in on mobile yet. That has to do with resources, I would say. But well, we saw that we need to gain attention internally, because that was the biggest challenge: getting more resources to eventually get a better use case for our app. And what we actually saw that really helped was not because, of course, we tried telling a horror story that, hey, if we have this trend line in mobile is going to be big, and it will cannibalize our entire business, and we're a desktop focused company because we've been around for so long, and perhaps we're the market leader, so we could also have been a bit lazy. Should we focus on mobile more and really do a step change there? And if you then say, okay, the horror story, like we're going to be left behind, and people understand you, but they're not seeing the bigger picture because it doesn't relate to their daily jobs or the strategy that we're, as a company, following. What we noticed that did work is actually share from a data perspective that the app was not just cannibalizing profit or revenue or customers. It was actually delivering an added value on top of it, because we, back then, I believe it were like 8 million customers on an annual basis that we already had. And we, of course, wanted to grow that. But what a lot of people then say is, okay, it's very logical that most people that are loyal are starting to use the app. Well, data actually also tell us otherwise, that people that started using the app also became more loyal, exactly like you told us just 10 minutes ago. And data that we saw, for example, some angles where, okay, the customer lifetime value from an app user is higher, but also the marketing spend becomes lower because they directly go to your app instead of that they go to your platform via Google. And also their net promoter scores was higher because we could provide them a better UX, native designed app. And I think that really helped us eventually to plot the story, and that people said, okay, if we're going to have this lifetime value based business, then we should definitely go for the app because that's just one of the CLV drivers. And I think that eventually, that was before my time, but they made the change. Okay, now we need to be a platform, so let's open up our brand and our website and app for third-party sellers. And having an app that for people that can go to your platform directly, and if that's their starting point of search, that is quite essential. If that's your platform strategy, and if that's also your loyalty strategy. So that really underlines our entire company strategy, and that is actually the part where we're at now, and that's really taking off for the last 2 years, that we're really seeing major growth in the app, as it's not just a single team that is focusing on it, but the entire company, and that's a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, it's a incredible transformation that you just described. Of course, going from heavy reliance on the website. To moving to shifting that experience to an app. But I think, as you pointed out, the benefit is the direct connection with that audience and that user, and of course validated on the back end through the experience, the NPS, which is representative of the experience that they're having there, and of course the lifetime value as well. I think it would be. I don't know that there's a conversation that we can have with anyone today that doesn't include an understanding of how the recent world events that we've all faced have changed the business or impacted the business. And as a brand that really supports in many ways a lot of the daily needs of your customers, I'm going to assume that you saw a pretty dramatic impact in the very early stages of the pandemic. Maybe you can talk about how the pandemic impacted the business, and maybe even tailor some of your thoughts to how that translated into the app usage or the app experience.
Yeah, so we definitely saw that, and that was at the beginning of March, and both new users, so installs, but also current usage, it literally went through the roof, and that, of course, is a very good thing. I mean, we're on the good side there, and we're very lucky to be there. But on the same side, what we also saw is that demand was so incredibly high that we needed to really actually pause our deal-led campaigns. So all our promotions that we were having, we really need to stop them. And that's not just to maximize profits. It really was, okay, we need to actually steer away and lower demand, because we couldn't really handle it. So we also we of course have some mechanisms in place that we can steer up on demand. So cutting deals is one, but also, and that for e-commerce companies is a really big one, like turning off all your search campaigns on Google. That is a really big one, and that is something that we're normally only used during the holiday season. So that gives. I would say that gives a comparable view or an impression on how big the peak demand was at the beginning of this year. And in addition to that, I think that what we saw now is that we really needed to be cautious in what we said, because we could not really do nothing. So, for example, we saw that. The face masks, they were, of course, the demand to them was used as well, and so people were searching for it. Views were high, and also what we saw is that they actually immediately started to pop up everywhere in our product recommendations, so on the homepage, on product detail page, etc. But what we also saw is that there was actually a too high demand in the entire market. So the people that needed it most, people working in healthcare, there was a shortage on it. And we decided, okay, we'll be stopping with selling face masks, and they can go to the people that need it most. I think that those kind of things are, in addition to what you usually would do to a holiday season, that was quite insane. And not just on the consumer side, we also saw it on the other side of the platform, on the third party seller side, the numbers, what we saw there, we grew from I believe it was 25,000 to 36,000 third party sellers, and that was just in the first phase of the pandemic. So that was really insane.
Yeah, that when I think about the results in the McKinsey study, one of them was seeing disruptions in supply chain. I would imagine that for your business, there's a lot of logistics that go into fulfilling an order for your customers, and with spikes in demand, I'm going to assume that was a primary focus area for you to make sure that you're able to execute. And I think, I'm sure lots of folks listening are probably envious of the fact that you were able to begin the pandemic by reducing or eliminating your marketing spend, so you could control demand. Obviously, that's not the plan for Bol.com going forward. As you progressed through what is ultimately the marketplace driving their engagement with you versus Bol having to kind of stimulate that, how has the organization then kind of settled into kind of the post-peak environment and begun to manage your engagement? You talked earlier about how app was an important aspect of your experience that you're trying to create for your customers, but my guess is during the early parts of the shifts that we saw back in the spring, customers are going to engage with you probably a little bit more through the website, given the fact that they're sitting in front of desktops a bit more frequently. How did you go about kind of, I'll say, rebalancing your engagement level across the primary website and in the mobile app, with the mobile app, of course, being a high value channel for you overall? Were there any initiatives that you guys implemented to try to stimulate app engagement?
Well, I think there was one particular example that was immediately at the start. So in the Netherlands, I thought it was the second or the third week of March, where the government said, okay, we're going into what they call smart lockdown, but everybody needed to work from home. And that's actually when installs, engagement, and demand went through the roof. And we then paused our advertising campaigns and also our sales campaigns. But what we did, we introduced another campaign. And like I said, we didn't want to overdo it, and we needed to be very cautious in what we say, because you don't want to be seen as a brand, and that is that moment pulling the benefits from the pandemic. That's not a good thing. So even if we would start off with a small campaign back then, it would not be a successful campaign, because the demand will be higher than what we could offer. And again, even if we could offer it, the logistics side of our platform could not handle it. And even if then, if we would push sales, then that will mean that we're also increasing contact moments. And that was, of course, a very hard thing, because what we do is push physical goods. And so that was quite challenging, because that's all contact moments with the delivery guy or women who is literally delivering the physical goods at your doorstep. So there the campaign team really got creative, and what they did is adapt to the situation where you need to have something that scales. And as also the lower schools, as they were also in lockdown, so they were closed, so the parents were at home working from home, but also with their children, and they had nothing to do. So what we came up with is actually a campaign where we sold ebooks and audiobooks for just €1. And those were books that were really relevant for children. And we released content every day on 9 o'clock. And what we also did in addition to that is have the famous influencers in the Netherlands read out pages from that book. And that, of course, would lead to higher engagement. But that was really a thing for, a thing from us that we really wanted to be there and help people through this awkward times. And that campaign eventually went viral on WhatsApp too. So that was a really funny thing to see, that while we were being really cautious and we actually thought, okay, we cannot really do anything good, because if we're doing a campaign, it would lead to more sales and contacts. The only thing that we can then do is do what scales most, a lot of digital products. And that's what we saw, that even our new customers, but also our current most loyal customers really valued. So that was a cool thing to see.
Yeah, that's I think a great example of the brand giving back as well, in supporting the overall needs of the community. One of the things that you had mentioned to me as we were talking recently was about a program that you had run to try to drive app usage. It was a lottery, I think. Can you maybe talk about that program and why bowl.com chose to execute it, and what the objectives were, and how it supported or delivered against those objectives?
Yes, so I think that was already when it really settled down, because now we're in the Netherlands, we're in the second flow of the pandemic. But when most companies were already starting their marketing campaigns, we could restart a few things as well. So we restarted push notifications, and we already had our daily deal at the end of May. That was also going live again. But again, if we would do any campaign, if we put it live, it would again lead to more still in the face that we could not really increase or push any sales. But again, this was such a unique opportunity to let people experience our app, where we thought, okay, if we can benefit not competing with other sales-related campaigns internally, because that's what you actually do if you want to promote an app. Of course, you can spend all your money on Facebook and Google, but what you actually want is that you also benefit from the reach of your own platform. So that for us, that will be our mobile website and email and other communication channels. So what we came up with is actually a campaign where we, without really increasing the sales, of course, we increased it for the app, but not on the total company level. We actually incentivize users to place their order via the app, as they would their order number will be the lottery ticket, and each hour as they place an order, that ticket will be something that they could win 250 euros of shopping credit. And that is also what we really saw, that was one of the best weeks in terms of app shares in revenue. And it also, of course, we never did this before, and it was a really a kind of a big campaign when you look at it from our total platform perspective. And we really saw that sales shifted. It was not really an increase for the app, it was, but on a total level, it wasn't. So that's a very positive campaign, where we increased and met our goals for the app without really steering into or threatening anything that we actually wouldn't want to have. So that was a cool campaign. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great example, because obviously you were able to shift without changing sales volumes, which was important because you have your back end logistics that you need to maintain and your capacity levels. You were able to shift your sales to your app, which has a lower cost because you didn't have paid media associated with it. And you were able to create that better experience that you talked about earlier within the app, and all working toward, gaining deeper engagement with customers that will represent higher long-term value over time. Have you seen, you described that drove a substantial amount of app engagement through that particular promotion. Have you seen that app engagement level maintain post that promotion?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So what we see, and I think what e-commerce in general sees in the summer, you could have what we used to call this holiday dip, when everybody's going on vacation, and then well, your app usage could start on a low decline. But eventually, when back to school, the campaign in September or August, September, when that goes up, you immediately see that your users go up as well. Because everybody was staying at home, we really didn't have that dip in August. So what we did to engage with the customers that already had our app, and to keep them using our app, and also to value our loyal customers, is actually as another to appreciate and give something back. What we did is send them over a postal card, because as you can imagine, as you're a frequent shopper, that pre-pandemic you would be at work or have commuting time, and you would order a lot. You just cannot be at home all the time for your package to be delivered. So what's the case is that the delivery guy, woman, goes to your neighbors, and when you come at home in the evening, you're very likely to go to your neighbors, like ring the doorbell and have a small talk and get your package and go. And in the pandemic, everybody's at home, so thought, okay, it will be cool to get that connection back on, and preventing contacts, of course, again. But what we did is send out postal cards, and that were postal cards with funny jokes on it, not related to COVID, but more related to, okay, a long time no see. See you at my next package, that kind of jokes. So we send that to our most loyal customers, and there were 3, I believe. And our most loyal customers, that was the goal, of course, that they would then spread it within their street. And of course, they were branded with our brand on it.
That's a great example of a multi-channel campaign to try to drive engagement across the brand. That's fantastic. I want to ask you a couple of questions about your plan for the next few months, and maybe any advice that you would have to others looking to grow app engagement. But before I do, I'd love to get your thoughts quickly on how personalization is being used by Bol.com to drive deeper engagement with your app customers.
Yeah, so engagement has been a hot topic for years. And I think that there's always the story about engagement. No, it should not be engagement. It should be talking in segments, and you're relevant, and well, let's just keep that where it is. But we of course want to personalize most of the things. What we saw during the pandemic is that we actually shifted away from it for a moment, because it would otherwise lead to more sales. And that's just something we cannot permit ourselves. If we look at what we're doing with personalization, we actually find that customers expect that they get a personalized experience, and I get that. We all do, actually, but one thing that really adds to it, that makes it understandable that they expect a personalized experience, is of course GDPR. So people are more aware of the data that they are sharing with companies like us, and I think that's a good development. But what you also then see is, okay, well, why are you showing me this advertisement in the app, or why are you recommending me this product which I've already bought? And I think that is a really hard thing. For example, on the daily deal, I think that's like the title suggests, it's a deal that we have every day, but it's one deal for all the customers. We're not personalizing it in a way, which is of course good for engagement, because if you deal every day, and people who like it will get into your app every day just to check what the deal is. But what people expect is that when you send a push notification regarding that daily deal, that you send it on a time that they frequently use the app. So it could be in the morning, could be in the afternoon, could be in the evening, but personalize it, because it doesn't make sense if I use the app every morning that you send it in the evening. And of course, we agree to that. In addition to that, what we see is that they also expect that we personalize the deal. And that, of course, is a very big thing, and it's a hard thing. I mean, like I said, the company is 20 years old, much legacy systems. There's plenty of things to do. If we then want to do this, that is a tough one to pick up. And then we're actually not even looking at the work that comes in it from a non-technical perspective, which is sourcing the deals every day.
Yeah.
So let's say it's just about picking your battles and which weight do you want to pull into it. But personalization is definitely a hot topic across all our communication channels, but also in the app experience, of course.
Yeah, and I think as the data I shared earlier represents, I think people are willing to share data for personalization. I use the example of the opt-in, location opt-in as one data point. I think people are willing to share it when they see value for them, when it's easy for them to connect that value directly back to a benefit for them. And of course, as marketers, we're always trying to figure out, what are those elements that are really, value added for the customer. And in many cases, it's different for each individual. As we wrap up, Rik, I know folks would be curious to understand how you are thinking about mobile app engagement over the course of the next 3 to 6 months. You've got obviously some, annual events coming up with the holidays. Tell us maybe a little bit about your app strategies or priorities for engagement over the course of the coming, quarter or two.
Yeah, so I think that's a tough one to really share, also for a public company. But of course, when we operate in a very relatively small market, so the Netherlands and Belgium, we already have 11.5 million active customers. So what we tend to say is, okay, we of course we focus on acquiring new customers, and especially for the app, but the key differentiator will be focusing on loyalty and engagement. So when looking at what we innovate on from that perspective and the developments in the market, we tend to look at first at the product. Like, can you add several things that make users come back and more habit-like? So, for example, that daily deal. Of course, not everybody is waiting for a deal every day, but some are. And on top of that, you can add your own communication channels, I would say, because that would make sense. But I would prevent to get addicted to paid advertising campaigns to really meet that goals. And of course, they're necessary, and it's just a part of the ecosystem. But I think that once you're addicted to that traffic shots each week, then it's a very easy thing to just keep on doing that, and then, well, there goes your budget. So yeah, that's more from the innovation side. If we then look at what we have for the holiday season that's planned, we just released a toys book, which is just a physical book with lots of toys in it and QR codes. So the children will really love it, and the parents can easily scan it from with their app. And there we're seeing a creative way where people are installing the app from a non-advertising. Of course, there are costs that we've made for it, but not from the traditional advertising way. And now we're really standing out doing so.
Yeah, that's a great example, and I'm really excited and appreciative of the fact that you've shared your experiences with Bol.com through both the what was the normal environment through what has been abnormal, but really returning to what I'll call a little bit of a business as usual approach to your engagement with customers. So, Rik, I greatly appreciate you spending some time with us. I hope the folks have gotten some value and some tips and tricks about some of the things that you have done at Bol.com, and hope everybody enjoys the rest of their mobile on air experience throughout the course of the day. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you too. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them on LinkedIn or such.